Hello, everyone, and welcome to our Ask the Experts Q&A. Today, we get to talk to Dr. Michelle Gray. She is the overseer of the DCMARVEL study at the university. She has a PhD in exercise science, and she's an associate professor at the University of Arkansas. Dr. Gray, welcome. We would love to hear what inspired you to do this project.
Thanks, Natalie. I really appreciate it. Hello, everyone. I know I've not met everyone just yet, but I'm the master behind some of the emails that you've gotten at the very least. But the inspiration behind this project really is twofold. Number one, in 2017, I lost a grandmother with Alzheimer's disease. And I think anything that I can do from a research perspective, or even from a personal perspective, to improve the awareness of Alzheimer's disease or improve someone's cognitive outcomes, I want to be a part of that. And grandmother had cognitive decline for a long time before she passed in 2017. She was 81, I think it was, years of age, give or take. But we started to see some of these negative declines in cognition and memory and executive function, et cetera, probably in her mid 60s. So I think it's important that we're tracking over time some of these cognitive outcomes and trying to figure out what we can do on that front. The other side is again, it stems from relationships, is one of the employees, the chief science officer, I believe that's his official title, at NeuroTrack, is one of my former doctoral students, Dr. Jordan Glenn. So he reached out to me, and we have partnered up on a handful of other projects before this particular big project. And I really have bought into NeuroTrack and what NeuroTrack stands for. And I believe in Jordan and what he stands for, and he's a really ethical, stand-up type of guy. So I thought it would be great to work with one of my former students in a slightly different capacity.
Oh, thanks for sharing that. I know a lot of our participants they share with me their personal stories and what it was that drew them to want to participate in the DCMARVEL study. So I'm sure this will be heartwarming to them to hear your personal connections with relationships here. What can you tell us about the two arms? We've got the health education arm of the study and the health coaching arm of the study.
Absolutely. When you really design research projects, you really have an intervention typically, and you have a control type group or a control arm. The intervention arm of this particular study is the health coaching side of things, and the control arm is the health education. But with health education, we didn't want to do nothing. Typically, control arms, you don't do anything. You follow folks over time, you let them live their lives, but you don't intervene whatsoever. We decided that we wanted to continue to engage with folks. We didn't want to bring them in for time 1 testing and time 2 testing and wait 4 months before they heard back from us. So we're presenting them with information. We send them an email every other week that provides a tidbit of information. I can't remember what last week's was on, but several weeks ago, I get them too, just so you know, and I read them and try to implement them. But one of the first ones was about increasing fish in your diet. I think most people have probably already gotten that. So once a week, I try to make it a point, at least once a week, of adding some sort of fish to my diet. A couple of weeks ago, it was about sleep and how many hours of sleep I should have. I shared with Natalie, I was up at 5 a.m. this morning, so sorry if I'm stumbling over, but I went to bed early last night, et cetera. So I want to make sure I'm getting that type of sleep. So that's where the health education part comes in. The health coaching part really comes in. It's the same information, I'll be honest. Natalie, you're the health coach. You're probably talking about some of these dietary factors that people should be partaking in. So decrease the number of times you eat fast food, right? Or decrease your saturated fat. You want to increase the number of fruits and vegetables. So it's the same information, but it goes back to the relationship. The health coaching side, I do believe, provides a tool of providing or giving information to individuals. And that tool is you, Natalie. And I think you're doing an exceptional job based on the feedback that I've gotten from participants. But also, you know, there's speed bumps in the road. There are things that come up where I'm too busy, or I feel like I'm too busy to exercise, or I feel like I'm too busy to meal prep. And the health coaching side provides some tips, tricks, or I hate to say tricks, but tidbits of information on how to overcome some of those speed bumps as well. So at the end, we're going to compare the health coaching folks to the health education folks and see what changed between the two. Maybe they tracked together and maybe they didn't over time. We'll see.
Yeah, I know I hear that so often from the people I coach is like, I know what to do, I just struggle to do it. And yeah, that's all what coaching is all about, working through a lot of those barriers. So yeah, it's really interesting to hear about the difference between the two arms of the study. And on another note, like I've had a lot of participants wondering about the different tests that were selected when they come into the university. Can you share more about why those were selected and how it relates to the overall goal?
Absolutely. And I really want to start with how it relates to the overall goal. So we know that, and we just found, we as society, scientists, et cetera, we just found out or realized that the risk factors for Alzheimer's disease are the same or very similar to the risk factors for cardiovascular disease. So when a participant comes into the lab, they are doing some of those assessments. That they're doing 3 different categories of assessments. I've broken them down into 3 different categories. We have some health assessments, we have physical assessments, and then we have cognitive assessments. The cognitive assessments, obviously, or I think it's obvious, we want to see how your cognition changes over time. But it's not just one cognitive assessment. There are different cognitive paradigms. So we have executive function, which is the planning part of cognition. We have immediate memory. When I leave a room and walk into the other room and I forget what I went in there for, that's because I'm having a decrease in immediate memory. We have long-term memory, which are things that happened 15 or 20 years ago. We have attention. As we get older or as we have cognitive decline, it's much more difficult to keep my attention on the thing that's in front of me. And there's a window behind the computer screen, which I know no one can see, but there are cars going by. So I really have to inhibit myself from looking over there and concentrate on what's in front of me. So inhibition, concentration, attention, where I am in space, those things are often related and tied to cognition. We're doing 2 different test batteries for cognition, though. We're doing RBANS, which stands for the Repeatable Battery for the Assessment of Neuropsychological Status. And I wrote that down, so I had to look across the screen. And we're doing the NeuroTrack test battery. We're doing both of those because RBANS has been long adopted in the community for neuropsychological testing, and NeuroTrack is kind of new. So we're really comparing those 2 over time and looking at differences or similarities between those. So moving on from cognition, we also have the physical assessments, which I'm an exercise physiologist, so I always go back to the physical side of things. We're measuring cardiovascular function. So we do a 6-minute walk. We have a cone at one end of the hallway and a cone at the other end of the hallway, and folks walk for 6 minutes. And how long they go, well, all go 6 minutes, but the distance they cover can tell us how aerobically fit they are. So the further you go, the higher your fitness, the less distance you go, the lower your fitness. We do a 10-meter walk test, which is a very functional assessment. We do the short physical performance battery, which is a measure of overall physical function. We do a hand grip test. And many folks don't understand that is a very important test of muscular strength, because hand grip strength is related to overall muscular strength. So the higher my hand grip, the greater my strength in my arms, the greater the strength in my legs, etc. We also do a sit to stand test with a belt that goes around the person's waist. And that test measures lower body muscular power, because muscular power is really important, not only for not only for athletes, but for everyone. If I don't have power, then let me say it a different way. Power is divided into strength and speed. So the strength that I can produce and the quickness at which I can produce that speed equals muscular power. So for example, the most functional way that I can explain muscular power is when I trip, and I trip a lot. I am kind of embarrassed. I don't fall a lot, but I trip a lot. So I need 2 things. I need to be able to get my foot out fast, okay, and with enough strength to catch my body weight. Otherwise, I'm going to fall. So muscular power is really, really important when we're talking about the ability to live independently for a longer period of time. And then the third aspect or category that we measure are some health parameters. So we do take blood. We're looking at lots of different things in the blood, but the two immediate things that we look at are blood glucose, which we know the higher your blood glucose or the higher your blood sugar, it increases your risk of cardiovascular disease, but it also increases your risk of vascular disease in the brain. So it decreases your cognitive capacity. And then we look at cholesterol, which by and large is the same thing as cholesterol, increases your risk of cardiovascular disease and vascular disease in the brain.
Gosh, Dr. Gray, that's so comprehensive and so much there to give more meaning to our participants for, when they come to the test, like things they can work on once they get their numbers that, I'm sure they're all excited to work on that hand grip now.
I hope so.
But be challenging themselves to sit to stand maybe 10 or 20 times a day. But yeah, that's really exciting just hearing you explain that more in depth. On another note, like how do you see health coaching relating to the overall vision of the study?
Like I said, or alluded to earlier, I really think that health coaching is a tool, right? It's a tool just like a gym membership is a tool. The beautiful part about health coaching is it's very individualized because you work with individuals. I work with groups of people. So I know when a person's in the lab, I'm working with that one individual person. But really, when I get their data, I'm working with groups. So I'm working with the health coaching group data as a whole. I'm working with the health education group as a whole, and I'm looking at changes over time or changes or differences between groups. But the health coaching piece is as individualized as it gets. And this is new, uncharted territory for research. Because and it was hard, I'll be honest, for me to wrap my head around initially. I'm like, how is this going to happen? How am I going to write it up, et cetera? I was super, super concerned. You know this, Natalie, I brought this up probably a dozen times, but I've opened my mind, which I think is very important. And I've also learned that it's okay to lose some of the research specificity because we are targeting the individual. Each individual has a different starting point, right? We're all jumping off at a different spot. So the beautiful part about health coaching is you're meeting me here and you're meeting Susie here, but you're meeting Bob here, right? And everyone starts where they start and then they progress forward. So I think that's the beautiful part of health coaching is it's so individualized, number one. The other thing is I've heard such good things about you, Natalie, from our participants, that you are an incredible listener, which I can tell that from the several meetings that I've been in, and you provide information about well, I can't find the right word. This is another thing with decreasing cognition, but you help provide information on how to get over some of the barriers that they might be experiencing at that point in time.
Oh goodness, thank you so much for those kind words. It does take effort. I have to, like, before a coach call, I kind of have to prepare myself, like take 5 minutes and take a few deep breaths and be like, okay, let's get into listening mode. It's a lot of self-regulation because a lot of times I want to jump in and say something, but I gotta hold back. But yeah, I really love how you brought that out, that health coaching is very individualized, that everybody is starting at a different point, and it is hard to kind of grasp it. And I know participants, they have even asked me, what is health coaching? So it being individualized is the perfect way to kind of describe it. It's very personal to everyone.
Yeah, definitely.
I know that there's so much data being collected. Like, we were talking about health coaching, and of course we got to bring in the MindMate app. So how do you see all this data being collected at the end of the study?
That's an interesting question. So every piece of the puzzle is going to fit together. I don't have all of the answers just yet. And in fact, about an hour before this call, I met with some key players at NeuroTrack and then some key players from my lab, and we were looking at some of the preliminary data because everyone has completed at least 4 months. Some folks have been in it for a little bit more, but everyone's completed at least 4 months. We have time 1 and time 2 data on everyone. So we were looking at some of the changes over time. And then we were talking about engagement, and engagement is nearly impossible to define, right? So for example, I also teach, and how do I know my students are engaged? I don't provide an assessment and I assess them or evaluate their knowledge, their skills, abilities. That's a little bit different scenario than what we're talking about with this particular research project. So we're looking at how many times they've interacted with you. We're looking at how many times they've logged on to MindMate, how much time they've spent on MindMate, which particular app. So MindMate has 3 or 4, I can't remember. There's a physical activity component, there's a nutrition component, there's a TED Talk type video component, and then there's a brain game kind of component. I think there are 4, there could be one more. We're going to look at the volume of time an individual has spent in that app and the number of times they've connected with you, and create some sort of subgroups, because we know some folks aren't into it, right? I didn't sign up for this. I don't want to do the MindMate. I'm not into games. You know, we've heard everything. That's fine. But we'll create some subgroups of folks that weren't engaged, folks that were moderately engaged, folks that were highly engaged. And then we can sort of tease out some of the nuances of the data, because, you know, we will also look at the groups, everyone in health coaching, everyone in health education over time. What were the changes? What were the differences between the groups and the slopes of the line? So maybe everyone got better, but it was a steeper improvement with health coaching. We don't know. We're going to find out. But also some of the nuances, again, we will subdivide the groups into low, moderate, high engagement to see if there's a difference there as well.
Gosh, I'll be so curious, and I know all of us will, to see what all this results in. Yeah, I cannot wait.
I can't wait either.
Yeah, it could go like you're saying. It could track, or you know, there could be a steep incline. We just have to see and do the work, like you know, that engagement piece. Hopefully, you know, I know we're asking participants to be engaged for 2 years, so I just persevere. It's going to be worth it in the end, right?
Yeah, I think it will be worth it in the end, to be terribly honest. We run some preliminary stats, and they are very promising. That's what I can tell you right now in the moment. They are very, very promising, and there's some greater improvements in the health coaching group compared to the health education group, but there are some surprising improvements in the health education group that I did not expect. I expected the health education group not to change whatsoever, but those tidbits of information coming out every couple of weeks, so you're not overwhelmed, and it's one topic at a time, that could be really beneficial. And it could be, you know, in the future, that could be a direction for health coaching, because you, like you said, it's exhausting. You are in the mindset, you're a listener, you're taking it all in, you're thinking, oh, this is the barrier of this person, I need to help this person in this way, and that's different than the last call. But between those sessions, maybe a tidbit of information could be helpful as well.
Well, yeah, there's a lot of insights coming from this, like even that little tidbit there. But come on, health coaching team, let's get after it. What advice, Dr. Gray, would you have for our participants?
Oh my gosh, that is such a wide open question, Natalie. And I could go on for a day and a half if you know me at all. I would say, and you already said it, I'll be honest, is to remain engaged. If that was the one bit of information, remain engaged. Keep asking questions, keep providing feedback to Natalie or the team that you interact with here on campus. Look at your results. We're providing them with some immediate results, the body composition from the DEXA scan and the blood results. Look at those and do a comparative analysis, even within yourself, and say, ooh, this went in the wrong direction. How might I change that? Tell Natalie, my blood glucose went up 10 points. What can I do about that? and just make sure they're asking questions. And I think that is a marker of engagement as well. Also, I just want to make sure that everyone knows they're going to get all of these results at the end of 2 years, all of them. And we'll put them together in a graph so you can see what goes up and what goes down. It won't be that pretty. What happens is things do this over time, but we'll try to explain some of the trends. We'll bring folks together so we can explain what this means or that means. That there will be a lot of data to unpack. So we want to make sure that we're not only doing these tests and keeping people involved for 2 years and then cutting them off. We also want to make sure that they understand what this means. And these results, number one, would be very expensive to get in a physician's office or in a clinic. But with that, we want to make sure that we're nurturing our relationship with our participants even at the end of the study.
Dr. Gray, thank you so much for that. Is such great advice. And I know participants are going to be grateful to hear that they'll get all of these results at the end, and that, like you said, we're not just cutting them off. We're going to provide some guidance to help them move forward with all of this information that they'll be presented with to know what to do with it, and how it, like we're talking about it being so individualized and how that relates to them personally. So appreciate your time today and the personal stories about yourself and your life that you've shared. You brought such humanity to this conversation today that I know our participants can relate to so much of what you've shared. Thank you again. And everyone, I hope you enjoyed this interview. Have a great day.
Thanks, Natalie. I appreciate it.